Imagine this. You're sitting in pitch-black darkness. The air smells like sweat, rotting wood, and raw sewage. Your hands are blistered raw, and your ankles are rubbed bloody by heavy iron chains. Suddenly, a drum beats. Boom! You pull. Boom! You pull again. You aren't a human being anymore. You are a biological engine part for the navy of ancient Carthage. And the worst part, you're never leaving this bench alive. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're taking a trip back to the brutal waters of the Mediterranean during the Punic Wars. We'll often hear about the great generals like Hannibal or the might of Rome, but we rarely talk about the guys in the basement making the whole thing move. We're going to walk through the entire life cycle of a rowing slave, from the moment you lose your freedom to your inevitable watery end. So, grab a water bottle, because you're going to get thirsty just listening to this. Let's start at the beginning. How did you get here? Well, unlike other jobs in the ancient world, nobody applies to be a galley slave. It's not a career path. Most likely, you were a farmer, a merchant, or a soldier from a rival nation. Maybe you were captured in a raid on the coast of Sicily, or maybe you were a prisoner of war, sold off to the highest bidder. One day, you're walking free under the sun, and the next, you're stripped naked, inspected like cattle, and branded. You're dragged to the docks of Carthage, the superpower of the seas. You look up at a massive wooden beast, a quinquereme. This ship isn't just a boat, it is a floating prison. And once you walk down that ramp into the hull, you will never see the sky again. You are shoved into the belly of the ship. It is cramped. It is hot. You are assigned to a bench with 2 or 3 other guys. A blacksmith comes over, fits a heavy iron shackle around your ankle, and hammers the pin shut. That is it. That sound of metal on metal is the sound of your life ending. You are now structurally part of the ship. You don't get a cabin. You don't get a bed. You sleep sitting up, leaning on your oar, or curled up on the hardwood planks right where you sit. You are located on the lowest deck, which means you have hundreds of other men above you and 0 fresh air. The only ventilation comes from the hatchway above your head, which is usually closed during high waves. Now, you have to learn the job. You might think rowing is easy. It is not. You are wielding an oar that is massive, heavy, and unbalanced, and you aren't doing it alone. You have to sync your movements perfectly with hundreds of other men. If you pull too slow, the oar handle from the guy behind you slams into your back, breaking your spine. If you pull too fast, you foul the oars and the ship stops dead. To keep you in time, there is a man called the hortator. He beats a drum or 2 wooden blocks together. Boom, pull, boom, return. This rhythm becomes your heartbeat. If you miss a beat, the boatswain walks down the center aisle with a whip made of bullhide. He doesn't ask you to correct your form. He just flays the skin off your back until you get it right. Let's talk about the gross stuff, the stuff history books usually skip. You are chained to this bench 24/7. So, what happens when you have to go to the bathroom? Well, you don't go anywhere. You do it right there. Maybe, if you are lucky, there's a bucket passed around. But usually, it just flows down. And remember, the rowers are stacked in tiers. If you're on the bottom level, gravity is not your friend. You're constantly covered in sweat, seawater, vomit, and human waste. The smell down there would be enough to knock out a modern person instantly. Disease spreads like wildfire. If the guy chained next to you dies of a fever, he might sit there rotting next to you for days before the overseer bothers to unchain the body and toss it overboard. After a few months, if you haven't died of dysentery, you reach your physical peak. You are gaunt, starved, but your arms and back are made of steel wire. You are a calorie-burning machine. You are fed a gruel of grain and water, just enough to keep the engine running. During a chase, the pace increases, the drum beats faster. This is called ramming speed. Your heart feels like it's going to explode. You're rowing at a sprint, pulling thousands of pounds of water for hours. Your muscles tear, you're screaming in exertion. But you can't stop, because if the ship slows down, the enemy catches you. You were fueled purely by adrenaline and the fear of the whip.
Then comes the day you dread. The general yells, the trumpet sounds, battle. This is the Punic War. You are fighting Rome. You can hear the chaos above deck, arrows thumping into the wood, screams, fire. But you can't see anything. You are blind. You just row. Suddenly, crash. The whole ship shudders. You've been rammed. Wood splinters fly everywhere, impaling the guys next to you. Water starts rushing in around your ankles. This is the nightmare scenario. The soldiers above deck, they can jump off and swim. The captain, he can evacuate. But you are chained to the ship. As the water rises to your chest, you pull at the chains in panic. But iron doesn't break. The ship lists to the side. The screams of 300 men fill the dark hull as the air pocket gets smaller and smaller. The last thing you experience isn't glory or honor. It is the cold embrace of the Mediterranean Sea, dragging you down into the deep, still sitting on your bench. Your life, your story, ends here, at the bottom of the ocean, a forgotten piece of machinery in a war between empires. So, yeah, being a galley slave in ancient Carthage, definitely not a career I would recommend. It was a life of absolute misery, stripped of all humanity, ending in a terrifying death. It really puts a bad day at the office into perspective, doesn't it? If you learned something new about the dark side of history today, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. And subscribe if you want more stories about how awful life used to be. Let me know in the comments, what is the worst job you think existed in history? I'll see you in the next one.